Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this wonderful day? I hope, like where I am, everybody's nice and warm. Here in the middle of the desert, it's something like 27, 28 degrees. I'm assuming that in Europe and Central Asia and where you guys are, it's a bit cooler than that. Good morning. If you can, please turn on your cameras. We're going to start shortly. Thank you all for being on time. That already bodes very well. Yeah, I see you all in sweaters and I'm jealous. Sweaters and jackets. Everybody's settling in. Okay, Tareq, shall we start? We have a bit more than half here. Unfortunately, not everybody's here yet.
Okay, then let's start.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a great pleasure to be with you again. Just to remind you, my name is Tareq Abu Hamid. I am the executive director of the Araba Institute. In this 2 hours, we'll be talking about the renewable energy development around the world and some of the challenges actually and the key facts of the renewable energy sector around the world. And if we have time, I'll just talk about a little bit about some of the projects that we conduct here at the Araba Institute. I would like to start with this graph actually that shows the US primary energy consumption by sector and resource. And you can apply this to your own countries. On the left side, we see the primary energy resources like petroleum, natural gas, coal, renewable energy, nuclear, electric power in the US. And in the right side, we see the sectors that consume these energy resources, such as transportation, industry, residential and commercial, and electric power. And when we look to the US energy consumption, we see that 72% of the petroleum here in the slide, I don't know if you see my mouse, 72% of the petroleum goes for transportation. And if I go back, that means 92% of the energy resources that are used in transportation comes from petroleum. And if we focus on renewable energy sources in the US, which is the green color, which is 11%, we see that 57% of the renewables go for electricity production in the US. I believe that every one of you can prepare such a graph for your own countries. Why is this important? It's important because if we want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, if we want to increase the percentage of use of renewable energy resources, we need to know which sector consumes what and how much. And that will help us to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, as I said, and increase the share of renewable.
И тогда мы сможем повысить долю ВИЭ в энергобалансе наших стран. Если
I need to change the use of fossil fuels maybe into biofuels or into solar electricity for electrical vehicles. If my country consumes a lot of energy for the electrical power and my country uses coal for electricity production, that means I have to switch from coal into wind or solar energy to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. So when I prepare this for Israel, actually we focus mainly on two main sectors. One is the transportation and the other one is the electricity production, because Israel is not an industrial country. So these are for you to know that the sectors that consume energy, transportation, industry, residential, and the electrical power. And if we look into the US here, we see that it's almost equally divided, 28% in the transportation, 21% industry, and 37% on electrical power. In some countries, especially non-industrial countries, we see that the most energy is consumed in the transportation and electricity. Okay, so what are the challenges toward renewables-based world? In order for the world to be based on renewable energies, what are the challenges? The first one is the slow increase of renewables in total final energy consumption. We do not see the expected increase or the penetration of renewable energies in the energy mix. We need more innovation in some sectors. Innovation maybe in the residential sector, on heating and cooling processes, in the transportation sector, to switch from fossil fuels into biofuels or electrical vehicles. We need infrastructure development to increase the affordability in some markets, to spread more charging stations, to build more biorefineries to produce biofuels. And one of the most important challenges toward the renewable-based world is actually lack of sufficient policy support and enforcement in many countries around the world, and the resistant support of fossil fuels. I believe that this is the most important one. As I show you in the first slide, the energy consumption is not only based on electricity, also for industry, for residential. And we have to have policies that deal with these topics, not only to have renewables for electricity production or have biofuels for transportation. No, there are other industries, there are other sectors like industry and like residential that also consume a lot of energy, and we need policies for renewable energy to be included in these sectors in order to meet our country's goals. The share of renewable, the share of renewables in the total final energy consumption has increased in a moderate manner, and this is because of the rising global energy demand. And this rising demand actually was met by fossil fuels and not renewable energies. And we see also a decline in the traditional use of biomass, which is good because of public health and other issues, but it was covered, this decline was covered not by renewable energy sources, it was covered by fossil fuels. Let's start sector by sector to see what can renewable energy contribute and what is the share of renewables in these sectors. The building sector or the residential sector, renewable energy meets a growing portion of the final energy demand in the residential sector, although the share is still less than 15%. And renewables remain the fastest growing source in energy buildings, increasing like 4.1% annually in the last decade. And we see the highest growth was actually in the electricity use, with heating with renewable energy sources rose more slowly. Buildings do not use renewable energy sources for heating and cooling. The industry, which is one of the main challenges for renewable energy, industry needs, especially the heavy industry, needs very high temperatures. To meet the energy need for very high temperatures, actually you need to use, you do not have yet the right technology or the efficient technology to meet the demand where high temperatures are needed. The use of renewable energy in the industry actually focuses on industries that use low temperatures, low processes like hot water and similar things like that, or maybe the use of biomass for some processes. And when we look to heavy industry like the metal industry like iron, steel, cements, and chemicals, renewables accounted for less than 1% of the combined energy demand in 2018 in these industries, because these industries need very high temperatures in a continuous basis. The transport sector, it's like still in the world, the transport sector remains the lowest share of renewables. Renewables do not cover most of the vast majority of the transportation, because oil and petroleum products continue to meet the global transport energy. Like 96% of the transport is fed by fossil fuels. Biofuels and renewables just met a very small portion of the transportation sector, which is around like 3.1 or 3.2%. Today, the world is shifting from fossil fuels cars into electrical cars. However, if the electricity that we use in our electrical cars is not clean, that means our transportation sector will continue to pollute. Even if the car doesn't pollute because it's electrical, but the electricity that used by the car was generated by coal or natural gas. That means instead of polluting in the streets, we pollute in the power generation stations. Clean transportation means electric vehicle that uses renewable electricity, or a vehicle that uses biofuels produced from renewable energy sources. Also, it's important to mention that even if the electricity is not clean, electric vehicle pollutes less than a gasoline vehicle. It pollutes less, but it doesn't stop the pollution. This is important to know. The power sector in the world is actually driven by solar PV and wind power. The renewable power sector surged in the second half of the 2020 to overcome the pandemic's impact. We saw a slowdown at the beginning of the year, but we saw also increase installations in the second half of the year. And actually, some of this increase was based on many of the countries had goals to meet by 2020. During the past decade, many countries plan to have a certain portion of their electricity from renewable energy sources by 2020. That's why also we saw an increase in renewable power in many countries around the world. And China has continued to be the leader in installations and the use of solar and wind energy, and the production of wind turbines and solar cells. And the installed renewable power capacity grew more than 256 gigawatts during the pandemic, which was actually the largest ever increase. So regardless of the pandemic, the renewable power from wind and solar continued to grow. Do you have any questions? Any comments? Do you have similar increases in your countries? Were your countries able to meet the goals that they set for themselves by 2020 or 2021? Anyone from Albania that want to answer? Any comments?
Don't all talk at once, everybody.
Okay, then I will continue. Okay, here in this figure, we see the annual additions of renewable power capacity by technology and the total. Here, it's not the total in the world. No, we just see the annual additions every year. So the yellow color is solar PV, the blue is wind power, the green is hydropower, and the orange one or the brown one is the biopower, geothermal, ocean power, and concentrated solar power. And we see that the highest increase was in solar photovoltaic, and the second one is wind energy. And if we look by years, we see that PV, the yellow color, continued to increase. And we look to the blue one, which is the wind. We see that the increase wasn't like a linear increase. It was shifting. Some years the increase was less, some years it was high. But we see in the year 2020 that we almost have increase in every renewable energy resource, which is actually very promising result or outcome regardless of the pandemic that we had. And the reason of that, as I said, because many countries had goals to meet by 2020, so they were able to finish their installations before the end of the 2020. Let's start now to see the development and the renewable energy sources one by one, and we will start with bioenergy. The key facts about the bioenergy, it's like the modern bioenergy provided 5.1% of the total global final energy demand in the year 2019, and this accounts for around half of the renewable energy in the final energy consumption. The nice thing also that modern bioenergy for industrial process heat grew for around 16% during the last decade, while bioheat demand in buildings was 7% of the same period. In 2020, the global biofuel production fell 5%, with ethanol production down 8%, and while the biodiesel production rose slightly to meet the increased demands in the US and also in Indonesia and Brazil. The bioelectricity production grew 6% in 2020, with China as the major producer. So we see here also a very, we call it moderate increase in the use of biofuels in both the industry and also the electrical sector. And in this graph, we see the estimated shares of bioenergy in total final energy consumption, the overall by end user sector in the year 2019. So if we look at the right side of this graph, we see that the first column, which is the to heat buildings, the use of bioenergy is only probably like 4.6%. Traditional biomass was 24.6%, and non-bioenergy, like other sources, mainly fossil fuels, they were almost 70%. Why do we see traditional biomass like 24.6%? Because people still use traditional biomass, wood, to heat their houses and to heat their water during the winter. Heating buildings during the winter, it's one of the major actually residential energy consumers. Heat for industry, we see only 9% of the heat needed for the industry that comes from modern bioenergy. Transportation, only 4%, and the rest relies on fossil fuels. Electricity, we see that the share of modern bioenergy is only 1.7%. So this graph shows me that most of the modern bioenergy is used for heat that's used in the industry. Global bioelectricity generation by region, we see that the EU, China, North America are the actual major users of modern biofuels for electricity production. And the nice thing that we see that the average annual growth is around 6%. It's not an increase that we want to see. It's less, but at least there is an increase in the use of biofuels for electricity generation around the world, mainly, as I said, in the EU, China, and North America. Geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is very limited to certain countries where they have this source. And here when we talk about geothermal energy, we talk about high quality geothermal energy. It's not the low quality that's used for heating buildings or using the constant temperature of the ground for heating and cooling of the residential sector. The key facts about geothermal energy: an estimated 0.1 gigawatt of new geothermal power generating capacity came online last year. significantly less than the recent years, with just one country, Turkey, representing the bulk of the new installations. So Turkey is investing a lot on renewables, not only geothermal, but also PV and wind. The direct use of geothermal for thermal applications continue to grow around 8% annually. But as I said, the market remains geographically concentrated because these countries has the geothermal resources like China, Turkey, Iceland, and Japan. The main focus continued to be on technological innovation, such as new resource recovery techniques and seismic risk mitigation, with the aim of improving the economics of the geothermal technologies. And this is actually one of the efficiency of the geothermal technology actually encourages many countries to explore this option. The geothermal capacity and additions of the top 10 countries and the rest of the world during the last year, we see that the US is one of the major users of geothermal power. Turkey is the fourth country, and we see that more than 99 megawatts were added in the year 2020 in Turkey. Japan added 2 gigawatts. What is that the major producers or users for geothermal power is United States, Indonesia, Philippines, Turkey, New Zealand, Mexico, and some African countries. Hydropower, another important renewable energy resource. The key facts: the global hydropower market expanded in 2020, but did not recover from several years of deceleration. And this is actually because of the public acceptance of the technology. When you build a dam, you have to cover a lot of land, you have to force villagers to leave, you change the ecosystem. And in the modern world, there are a lot of environmental organizations that are against building hydropower dams to minimize the environmental impact of this technology on the ecosystem. China is the leading country in hydropower. In the year 2020, China added 12.6 gigawatt of hydropower capacity, which is the largest addition of the previous 5 years. The hydropower global capacity, the shares of top 10 countries and the rest of the world. We see China 29%, the rest of the world is 31%, the US 7%, Brazil 9%, and Canada also 7%. Photovoltaics. I divided here the solar energy into 2 types: photovoltaics and concentrated solar power, because they are totally 2 different technologies, and the penetration of the market of solar energy into the market actually relies mainly on photovoltaics, and the penetration of concentrated solar power is still very, very slow. The key facts. Solar PV had another record-breaking year in 2020, and the anticipated policy changes were the catalyst for such a growth, mainly in 3 markets: China, United States, and Vietnam. But several other countries also saw a noteworthy expansion, like Turkey, Germany, Israel also. The reason behind that is the favorable economics, and also the interest of people and the distributed rooftop systems. Example of that is South Australia. The solar PV industry rode a roller coaster in 2020, driven largely by the pandemic-related disruption, as well as by the accident at polysilicon facilities in China, the shortage of solar glass, the challenges in the shipping industry around the world. During the beginning of the pandemic, especially the residential sector suffered a lot from the expansion the expansion of solar energy suffered a lot in the residential sector because of the pandemic. People were not willing to open their houses or to have people come to their houses or to the roofs to install photovoltaic panels. But I think that continued for 5-6 months, and now the market is back into business in the PV. Here we see the solar PV global capacity and annual additions in the last decade, and we clearly see like almost a linear increase in the global capacity of solar photovoltaic panels. In the last year, we reached 760 gigawatts. And if we look to the orange or brown color, we see that the additions every year continue to increase. And we, in the last 10 years, we installed a capacity of solar PV increased from 39 gigawatt into 760 gigawatts, almost like 200 times more, which is a great development. The solar PV capacity by country and region in the last decade. The yellow color is China. The brown one is the European Union. We see also here that China is leading the world in the PV market. The rest of the world is actually just half of the sector in China. India is also started in the last like 4 years to be an important player in having a PV. If we look to the color of India here, we see in the year 2016 it was almost nothing, and now we have like probably 60 or 70 gigawatt installed in India alone. But if you look to the increase in the EU, we see that there is an increase, but it's not as significant as the increase that we see in India and Japan. Solar thermal energy. Here we're talking about mainly one technology, which is the concentrated solar power, as the parabolic trough and the concentrated solar power in towers for electricity production. These are the two main technologies for power production from concentrated solar energy. There's also other technologies like flexible lenses or concentrated photovoltaics, but the CSP market is mainly solar towers that concentrates the sunlight into one point, and also the parabolic troughs, which is a linear concentrating system that concentrates the light into one line. The key fact is that it's the increase in the concentrated solar power in the last 5 years were mainly in China, the United States, and Spain were actually the main users of concentrated solar power. But we see in the last 5 or 6 years there was no development in concentrated solar power in the US and Spain. The United Arab Emirates also investing a lot in this sector. Israel, before 2 or 3 years, they also installed a 200 megawatt concentrated solar power field, that is solar tower, in the southern part of the country. The development in the CSP is not like the development in the solar PV. And here we see the thermal energy storage global capacity and annual additions during the last decade, 21.1 gigawatt hour. We see that if we look at the previous year, the capacity in the year 2017 and 18, 15 and 18, we see that there was like insignificant increase in that. Another solar thermal power is actually the solar water heating collectors, mainly today also in China, Israel, Cyprus, Turkey is investing a lot in this. We don't see a very significant increase. And what we see here in the figure that the majority of the solar water heater relies on the glazed collectors. That means that you have a receiver, you have a glass box which contains pipes, and that what heats the water. And the unglazed collectors, actually the black pipes without using the glass to heat the water. The vast majority of the market is glazed collectors. And if we look to the technology, the type of technology, we see that the evacuated tube collectors also showing significant increase, especially in China. Heating water may look important for some countries, but for a country like Cyprus or for East Mediterranean countries rely on this technology. For example, Israel, the solar water heating actually consumes 4% of the total energy in the country. So it's a significant portion of the energy mix in Eastern Mediterranean countries. The technology is very well developed. The technology is now very cost efficient. A system, you can install a system with less than $400 or $500. Wind energy, which I'm sure most of you countries use. The key fact, the world added a record of 93 gigawatt of wind power last year, led again by China and the United States. For the first time, a global capital expenditure committed to offshore wind power in 2020 surpassed the investments of offshore oil and gas, which is a great development. The industry continued to face perennial challenges accelerated by the pandemic, but the momentum was maintained. Wind power accounted for a substantial share of electricity generation in several countries in 2020, including Denmark, 85%, Uruguay, 40%, Ireland, 38%, and the United Kingdom, 24%. And if we look here to the wind power global capacity and annual additions, we see that like 743 gigawatt installed today around the world. The addition increase almost like 30% every year. If I go back quickly to the solar PV, just to show you this one, it's 760 gigawatt. Okay. If we go to the wind again, 743 gigawatt. That means solar energy and wind energy around the world is almost equal. The total installed PV and wind. Wind power capacity and additions, the top 10 countries and the additions in 2020, we see China is leading the world with a very significant addition in the year 2020. It's also the United States has also a moderate increase in wind. What we noticed here from geothermal wind PV, that China is leading the world also in the renewable energy development. Wind power offshore, the global capacity by region. Offshore means in the sea. Okay, that we see that we have 35 gigawatt installed. When we compare this with 746 gigawatt, that shows us that the vast majority of the wind turbines, they are installed onshore, not offshore. And this is because of the complexity of installing these wind turbines in the sea, the transmission lines underwater. The distance from the production to the consumption site is very large. That's why companies or developers do not invest a lot in offshore wind turbines. But at the same time, it's a solution for some of the challenges that wind energy is facing. like the public acceptance, how people perceive this technology, the noise, the flickering effect from the wind turbines. So it's a solution for some of the challenges that we face in wind energy, but still it's like less than 5% of the wind turbines are offshore. Any questions, comments? I will not continue until I receive question. Yes, Luca.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding, you briefly touched upon buildings and renewable energy in buildings. In Georgia, we don't really have that much of penetration in that regard. I was wondering, what can we do to incentivize the adoption of renewable energy? Let's say, how can we reduce costs? For example, there were some talks in Georgia about implementing maybe a balance of batteries in neighborhoods. Can we implement technologies like this to improve renewable energy buildings?
Okay, actually, it depends on the cost of the PV system in your country, the cost of electricity, the use of electricity in the country. I'll give you the example of Israel. Israel, when started developing renewable energies, especially PV, there was a feed-in tariff law that actually encouraged people to install PV technologies in the top of their roofs, and many people did that with a very actually attractive cost of electricity. It was a very good investment and still actually very good investment. And now we have what's called both the feed-in tariff and also the net metering that you could use, and you have a meter, you consume and you have a meter, and at the end of the year you either pay the electricity company or get the check from the electricity company. And everything actually starts from increasing awareness, education, to tell people about the importance of using of these technologies. It's not it's a very well developed technology. PV panels, the efficiency is okay. It's good. The investment, you get your money back in 5-6 years if you get a nice feed-in tariff. The technology lasts for 25-30 years. You have to convince people. You have to develop policies to allow people to benefit from this technology at their homes. Here in Israel, because the residential sector consumes a lot of electricity, it's good for people to invest in this. We don't have a natural gas network that we use for heating our buildings. So we heat our buildings using electricity, using air conditioners, and we cool our houses also using electricity, using the same technology, because we have a moderate climate. I don't know exactly how the climate in all of Georgia, but I'm sure in the summer people use air conditioners, and that's the best way to actually convince people. The electricity demand is high in the winter, in the summer, and the solar radiation is also high in the summer. The other important thing that you can convince people to do is not only solar PV, but also a solar water heater, which is a very well developed, simple technology that can save a lot of electricity for heating the water in many countries around the world. And now with the new technology, with the evacuated tubes that are highly efficient, you need just probably 1 or 2 hours of sun in 2-3 days to heat the water that you need for 2 days. The technology is there. The technology price is very cheap. China is leading the world in the production of evacuated tubes. That's why the price is very low. A system can cost you a few $100s, and that can live for 20-25 years.
I also have a second question regarding biofuels, if I may.
Yeah.
Biofuels, we have a single large-scale producer in Georgia, and we mainly use biofuel, modern biofuel, B10 biodiesel for transport. I have had some communication with the company myself, and they have stated that people are generally not very well received, do not receive biofuel with a bit of distrust, perhaps. It's not well received and penetration is very low. Is this a problem in Israel, perhaps? So have you solved it? Perhaps you can share some experience in this regard.
Actually, in Israel, we don't have biofuels. We have few systems for biogas production and not for transportation. The biogas is used just to complement some of the heat processes in some industries. We have some small-scale home biogas systems. We don't have any biofuels, modern biofuels for transportation. But I will give you an example of solar PV. People at the beginning, they were very hesitant in the use of solar energy in their houses, and people were hesitant because of cancer, radiation, and things like that. But with the education, with the workshops, with the public hearings, with the people were convinced that this is the right technology to do. Look, it's the nature of people that we criticize or we judge every new technology, but we do not compare the new technology with the technology that we use today. If people know exactly how their electricity is produced, I don't think that they will criticize the new technologies that we have. To use biodiesels in the cars, it's less toxic or less, it pollutes less compared to the fossil fuels, and people should know that. It's everything relies, as I said, in education, putting that in the curriculums for the schools, increase the awareness toward renewable energies, to convince people that we have to start the transition from fossil fuels into renewable energy sources. Here in our region, we see it very clearly, the impact of the climate change on us. We see shift in seasons, we see less rain. Sometimes we have very heavy rains in a very short time that causes floods. You have to talk to people about these things, the impact of the use of fossil fuels on our climate. And if you have biofuels, you should use biofuels. Here in Israel, we have solar, and we use solar energy, not in very high percentages, but still people are willing to accept this technology. And the policies, look, it took us like probably 7 or 8 years to convince the politicians that this is the way we should go. It's not easy process, but we should start at some point, yeah. And you can give them other examples from other countries like the US, Brazil, Indonesia, that their transportation relies mainly on, not mainly, but significantly on biofuels.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Magdalena.
Hello. I have a question regarding the installation of PV on a rooftop for residential buildings that you mentioned for Israel. You said that they have like 2 types of incentives, if net metering is incentive and feed-in tariff. Do they choose between these 2 options, or what is like the regulation?
Yeah, you can choose either the net metering or the feed-in tariff. And also, it actually depends on the size of the also the system, the size of the roof.
Excuse me, is there a limitation of the installed capacity for?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And there's also different feed-in tariffs for
Есть разные зеленые тарифы.
up to 15 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, and also the industrial scale, which is like over than 1 megawatt. It has a different feed-in tariff. The feed-in tariff is it changes probably every few months in Israel, and for the large scale solar systems, we don't have feed-in tariff. We have a bid that's like a tender, and the companies decide on which price to put for the electricity. And the latest tenders that some companies received, actually the cost of the solar electricity was cheaper than electricity from fossil fuels. In some countries, like Jordan, like Palestine, they don't have feed-in tariff. They have net metering, only net metering. That depends on the regulations and the status of power consumptions in these countries. Any other questions? There's chat here. Okay, the translator is asking that you talk a bit slower. I will. Any other questions? Is there any country here besides Turkey that uses geothermal? That means no. Does that mean no? Okay. Wind energy.
Georgia has wind energy, one power plant.
What's the size?
Installed capacity is 21 megawatts. Copy one. Annual generation is about 80 million kilowatt hours. That's the only one we have. We have several projects in development, but at the present, that's it. And there's also a small amount of local wind power plants, very small, that are subjected to net metering.
Okay, is there any like objections from people toward the wind energy?
Yes, there is actually. We actually had one project that almost failed because of that, because it was interfering with flight patterns for birds. And that was the only objection.
I see. I see. We also here in Israel, we have.
Serbia also have wind energy, almost 400 installed capacity during last 2 years, and we don't have negative reactions against wind. We have reactions on small hydropowers, and we almost stopped to build small hydropowers. But wind is okay in Serbia, and it is our great potential in renewable energy.
What's the installed capacity there?
Installed 400 capacity in Vojvodina.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, in Israel also we have two wind farms in the north, and we have a good potential in the south near the Red Sea. But because it's in the route of bird migration, the country did not build any wind turbines in the south, because Israel, or the region that we live in, is actually a stop for these birds. When they migrate from Europe to Africa, they stop in Israel for food and for water, and they continue. And when they come from Africa to Europe, they also stop again in Israel. That's why we don't have a lot of wind farms in the country. I believe that Birds are clever and can avoid the wind turbines. And if you Google the bird fatalities from different technologies, that you can see that wind turbines are probably number 6 or 7 in the list. What is number 1? Cats. Number 2, our buildings. The windows of our buildings is probably the second largest killer of birds in the world. People don't know that. Our cars also kill birds more than wind turbines, and we continue using cars. That doesn't mean that wind turbines don't kill birds. They do, especially during the winter, when there's low clouds or when the weather is hazy or you have fog. Birds don't see the wind turbines. They just see the flashlight, the red light that is flashing on the wind turbine, and they fly towards that light. This is what causes actually the death of birds. The other important challenge of wind turbine is the noise of the wind turbines. And now with the new technologies, with the new aerodynamics of the blades, the noise is less. Still noisy. But when you look to the noise level, when you compare the noise level of wind turbines with other technologies, you will see it's also number 3 or 4 compared with the traffic or the noise in a kitchen or in a university campus or school. Still less. And this is one of the things that countries try to do, to not only for wind, also for solar, for geothermal, for hydro, the involvement of public in the decision-making process. When you inform the community that you're planning to do such a thing, when you share everything, when you become very transparent, showing the advantages, disadvantages of the technology, people tend to agree with the technology because they feel that they were part of the decision-making process. And to do it in a better way, to convince them to have a wind farm or solar field in their neighborhood or on the roof, they should have some kind of benefits. Share in the company or share in the field. That's how you convince people not to be against renewable energy sources. And it's actually what happened in southern Israel. Most of the solar installations were led by the communities here because they see it as a very good business potential. And it's the second kind of agriculture. Instead of planting trees, they plant solar cells, and it's a very good income for the whole region. When we look into solar, wind, and concentrated solar, look, wind farms and the photovoltaic fields, they don't generate a lot of employment for the region that they are installed in, because they don't need a lot of maintenance, especially PV fields. You have the installation, that's it. And you have a power plant that functions without any kind of, almost any kind of maintenance. Wind farms, they need some of, but concentrated solar, because you have trackers, you have concentration, you need engineers, you need people to work in the field, you need people to run, maintain the generators, the turbines. So concentrated solar power, it's good for the region, it's bad for the investor because they have to employ, they have people to maintain the systems. But solar PV is good for the investors because you build a power plant and you don't go back to see it. You just see it for the computer that it's functioning. In your region, because you have rain and you have a lot of green, you don't have the problem of dust. But in deserts, dust is a major problem for solar fields in our region, in the deserts. And if you don't clean your photovoltaic panels, and most people don't know that, if you don't clean them regularly, you can lose up to 1/3 of your electrical output because of the dust. When we talk about fields like 50 or 60 megawatts, that means you lose millions of dollars because of the dust. And this is actually what created what's called the PV cleaning industry. We have companies, technologies to clean photovoltaic panels. Some of them are dry clean, some of them are wet clean, some of them with robots, some of them with drones, some of them with people that you just come with the brushes and brush the PV field. Yeah, any other questions? Biogas, is there any country that produce a lot of biogas, or people aware about the technology in your countries? Yes, Luca.
Well, we don't have large-scale biogas, but people are aware, and I've seen personally myself. There are quite a lot, actually, maybe a few dozen biogas plants in Georgia already, in several farms.
Yeah. I think the nice thing or the most important thing is to have biogas installations in schools to show kids that it's very simple, it's doable, it's environmentally friendly. This is how people actually adopt this technology and copy it and build such systems in neighborhoods on their houses. Yes, Gordana.
In Serbia, we have 77 megawatts of biomass, and in agricultural area, and it is increasing more and more.
When you say biomass?
I don't understand.
Biomass, you mean?
Biogas. Sorry,
Biogas.
Biogas. Yes, biogas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, then let's continue. Here in this graph, we see the global levelized cost of electricity from the newly commissioned utility scale renewable power generation technologies. Utility scale means it's large farms of PV, wind, or PV. It's utility scale, means it's like megawatts of installations. Here, the first one is solar photovoltaics. We see that there was a significant decrease in the last 10 years from like almost 40 cents per kilowatt hour to almost 6 cents per kilowatt hour. In the concentrated solar power, we see that it's also a significant increase, but still more expensive compared to PV. Offshore wind is also almost 10 cents per kilowatt hour today. And for the onshore wind turbine, which is like almost 4 cents per kilowatt hour. So the cheapest renewable electricity is from wind. And the most significant decrease in the cost was in solar PV, which is almost 85% less in the cost in the last decade. And if we compare this with the prices of fossil fuels, let's see the gray line here, we see that most of the renewable electricity is either lower than the electricity that's produced by natural gas or coal, or just the same as the renewables, which is actually a very good graph to show to people, to present it in schools. And by the way, most of the graphs and that you saw here, I got them from REN 2021, that you can go and see the full report that is produced by this organization every year. It's a wonderful resource to get the latest data on what's happening around the world in renewable energy sources. Okay, and this figure shows the top 7 countries with the highest electricity access rate from distributed renewable energy solution. This is for the developing world and the use of renewable energy sources as a source for electricity. We see Nepal has the significant increase in Rwanda, Mongolia, then Kenya, Fiji, and Bangladesh. People use more solar energy, uses more mini grids, and using also or building mini grids from hydropower. They don't forget that these countries also rely a lot on biomass for heating, for cooking, and we have hundreds of millions of people who actually are not connected to the electricity grid, and they rely on such technologies to produce their own electricity. We have in in southern Israel, in the desert, some Bedouin communities. It's like local communities that they are not connected to the grid, and they rely mainly on solar photovoltaic panels to generate their own electricity. Some of them are happy with that. Some of them they prefer to be connected to the grid, but because they live in unrecognized villages, they cannot connect into the grid. They use biomass. They use a few solar panels to produce the electricity that they need for their daily lives. Are your countries 100% connected to the grid? Luca.
Yes. Well, we are not 100% connected. We are close to 99%, but there are some communities in northeastern Georgia where, well, mountainous regions that sometimes lack access, so they use PVs mostly for electricity production.
Any other country? Okay, I'll choose names. We have Mahmoud here.
Hi.
Hi.
It's hi everyone. 100% is electric.
Okay. We have here Natasha Stefanoska. Okay. Who else? Okay. Let's continue. One of the major challenges of renewable energy technologies, guys, by the way, I will not give a break. We will finish like in 10-15 minutes. Okay. Okay, one of the main challenges of renewable energy that it's intermittent. That means we don't have wind 24/7. We don't have 24/7. We have geothermal 24/7. We have hydro maybe 24/7. We don't have biomass the whole year, and that's why we need storage. The storage is the bottleneck for renewable energies in order to have or to rely on renewable energy sources. to store electricity, to store heat is one of the important or key technologies that we need to develop to have a healthy or a good transition from fossil fuels toward renewable energies. And actually, in some countries, I will answer your questions also just in a second. In some countries now, the new tenders for renewable energy projects require storage. So you cannot have a PV without storage. You cannot have a wind farm without storage. This is to meet the goal of a 24/7 renewable energy electricity at least. So some of these technologies is as pumped hydro storage, molten salt for solar thermal technologies, compressed air technology when you compress the air during the off-peak hours when the electricity is cheap, and then you release the air to produce electricity using generators when the demand is high. But this is crucial, as I said, for the transition from fossil fuels into renewable energy sources if we want to have 100% renewable electricity 24/7. So energy storage is very crucial for renewable energy technologies. And I think requiring or asking the new installations to have storage is an important step that should be taken in order to meet the goals that most of the countries set for themselves in Glasgow last month. Okay, let me go back to the chat. I received a question says, it was said that drones are being used to clean solar panels. Is there a practice of using drones in order to overcome the death of the large number of flying birds? I really don't know the answer if drones can to reduce the death of birds. But we know that with wind turbines to reduce the death of birds, they use radars. Radars that actually tells you that birds, especially in bird migration season, radars that tell you that birds are approaching the wind farm, and you can just turn off the wind farm, stop it from rotating until the birds pass. So this technology is used in many countries, but again, this is during bird migration process or when you have thousands of birds approaching the farm. When you have few birds, I don't think that the radar will be able to detect one or two birds approaching the wind farm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, something that we are developing here at the Arava Institute is solar air heaters and crop dryers. Here, as I said, in our region, this is Abigail said at the beginning that the temperature is 27 degrees in South Israel now. I'm in Jerusalem now, and the temperature is like 17, 18 degrees. This is our winter. Even during the winter, we have a lot of sun, and I believe that also in your countries you have sun also during the winter. Israel is famous by the technology of solar water heaters, but we do not adopt the technology of solar air heating. And what we try to do at the Arava Institute is to develop a technology that heats the air using solar energy. So instead of heating water, we wanted to heat the air with the sun. So solar air heater is solar thermal technology in which solar radiation from the sun is captured by a system and converted into heat. These photos here that you see in this graph, it's not from Israel. This is from North America and Canada. And they use this technology to heat buildings. They use solar walls that you see here in these photos, the black color, which is a very simple technology. It's a glazed technology. When these walls receive the sun, the black metal becomes hot, and they pass air through this black metal, and you send to your building hot air. So instead of burning natural gas or using electricity to heat your building, you can use the sun. So what we developed is actually evacuated tube system, as you see here in this photo. We filled these pipes with certain types of metals, and we passed air through these pipes to heat our houses. So this system here, you can put it at the wall of your room. It will suck the cold air from your room. It will pass it through these pipes and will send it back into your room as a hot air. It's very simple technology. Instead of using like air conditioner, which is like 2,000 or 3,000 watt, you just use a fan of maybe 50 or 60 watts. Using this technology, we were able to heat the air from room temperature into almost 120 centigrades, which is like a very high temperature for heating buildings. The system was very efficient, and we got very nice results. You can control the humidity, you can control the temperature in these systems. It's modular, so you can expand the system to have a system to heat the room, or you have a system to heat a whole building. And when we got these nice results, we said let's use these systems in crop dryers. So instead of farmers drying their crops, the banana or the apple or the grapes to make resin, instead of doing that in open air with dust and flies and insects, you can do it in a closed room. Connect our system, which is a solar air dryer, into this chamber here, where you can put your fruit or vegetables, and you can just dry them in 1 or 2 days instead of drying them in open air for 2-3 weeks. Very simple technology that can be built locally, connecting the solar air heater to a dryer. It can be small scale and also can be very large scale to dry the crops and help farmers in the developing world as a very good technology for as a post-harvesting technology, where farmers can keep their products for longer periods. And today is when you buy a pizza with a dried tomato, you pay the double the price. So it's a very good income for farmers. It's a very, as I said, simple technology. If you are interested in that, I'll be happy to share with you the publications that we had in this developing this technology. I will stop here, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Czekaj. Добре. Przepraszam.
Yes, Katerina.
Hello. May I ask the questions?
Okay, Stanislava, you can go
Natasha.
first. Oh, Natasha, okay.
Is there any European producer of vacuum tubes made by Bor silicium glass? Because in Macedonia, we informed that only China producer.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Is there any European producer of vacuum tubes made of Bor silicium glass? Because we know in Macedonia, we inform that only China producer about did vacuum tubes.
Yeah, there's German companies, there's Turkish companies, there's also American companies, but the main producer in the world is China. And you can get very high quality evacuated tubes from from China, very high quality. Yeah, Turkey is also one of the main producers in the world for evacuated tubes. But as I said, you can have German, Spanish, and American technologies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Katerina?
Thank you. So my question was concrete, connected to the presentation. So about the system which heat the space using the sun. So what about cloudy days and windy days? So which room temperature can be reached with this system? Or maybe you must use additional electricity to heat the space? And also what about the night period when we don't have a sun?
It's a very good question. Look, when you have a cloudy weather, the technology doesn't work. Okay, it just heats your building when you have sun, and we solve this challenge because you have to stop the air circulation with just a sensor. When the temperature inside the system reaches certain temperature, the fan works. So when you have a cloudy day or when you have a cloud, the temperature inside the pipe becomes low and the fan doesn't work. During the night, the system doesn't work because you don't have sun. However, we managed to fill the system with certain types of fillings that our system continued to heat the air like 2 hours after the sunset. We know that this is a challenge, but this is, and as you saw in the photos, the buildings are large. That means it's very good for public buildings, very good for governmental offices, for commercial offices, for schools, for clinics. That's for buildings that people use during the day and they don't use them during the night. Energy storage is needed, and there are several kinds of technologies where you can store heat and continue using that heat during the night, like phase changing materials. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Haik Livonian. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Yeah, where are you from? Where are you from?
Я из Армении, из
I'm from
Еревана.
Armenia, from Yerevan.
Is it sunny there? I see that you have sun there.
Ну, конечно, так
Yes,
называемый.
sure, it is sunny. It is sunny Armenia that we call it.
Let me.
Yes, it is sunny there. And sure, it is sunny. We call our country sunny Armenia.
Wonderful. So you can use this technology easily there.
Да, конечно.
Well, yes, sure, we can.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm reading one question from the chat. For example, there's on wind turbines detected that high number of birds are close to them. The drones which are located near to the wind turbines take off when using some technologies. Actually, yes, I agree with you. Yeah, yeah. Yes, Mahmoud.
In the beginning, you showed that in US how the electricity is going, and you mentioned in your country is that mainly you use renewable. You are going to use renewable in electricity production and transportation. Is it correct?
No, I said that the transportation and the power production sector are the major energy consumers in our country. That most of the energy that we have is consumed for electricity production and for transportation, because Israel is not an industrial country. And this is important because if we want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in a certain country, first of all, we have to understand what mainly produce CO2. Is it the transportation? Is it the industry? Is it the power sector? That's very important for a country to meet the goals that they set for themselves to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And here, actually, it should be like a holistic approach on how to decarbonize all the sectors, not only the power sector, not only the residential sector, not only the transportation sector, also the industry should switch from fossil fuels into renewable energy sources if possible. Because, for example, in some countries, they produce a lot of metals, and the production of metals needs very high temperatures. And the renewable energy may not meet that goal. Maybe concentrated solar power can be used, but the technology is not yet there. The chemical industry, the cement industry, these industries pollute a lot, and they use a lot of fossil fuels, and also they need very high temperatures. Okay, there is no any other questions. Guys, I really enjoyed being with you, and I wish you all a very successful
Sorry, Luca has a
workshop.
question.
I saw that.
Oh, okay.
I saw that. Yeah.
Not really a question. You mentioned a publication. Could you please provide that? I know.
Yes, I will send it to Abigail, and she will distribute it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really encourage all of you to participate in the discussion. I asked you questions. It's not only because I want you to be involved, but because I also want to learn. And I strongly believe that you can learn from each other much more than you learn from the lecturers. This is the main goal, is to create a coalition. It's a great opportunity. You are here from a lot of countries. We have 20-some participants. Each one of you is a lecturer. Each one of you have a lot of knowledge that you can share, and you can benefit from each other. It's not only that. You will become an alumni of this workshop, and you will be in touch with each other. So you will be the consultant and the advisor of each other. So this is really a tremendous opportunity for all of you to know each other, to benefit from the experience. That's really important to share your knowledge, to participate in the discussion. And if you have any questions about this lecture or any other lecture in the future, you can always reach to Abigail, and she can forward your questions to the lecturers. Thank you all, and I wish you all a nice weekend.
Stay on just 1 second, everybody. Tareq, thank you very, very much. Everybody, I want to strengthen what Tareq says. This is definitely a network that we're trying to create here. We've done these programs in the past, and they're still very active on WhatsApp and on email. People invite each other to conferences, share information, publications that they put out, things like that. This is definitely something that we want you to be very active in. So please, if you can, in the future lectures, turn on your cameras, let us know that you're actual people and not little black squares on a screen. That would be very helpful. Thank you, Mahmoud, for that demonstration. Oh, more people, wonderful. And we do want you to ask questions and share your knowledge as well. As Tareq says, it's not just about learning from the lectures, it's also learning from each other, because you're all very advanced in your fields. You all have experience in renewable energy. I'm sure that you can each learn from each other. Okay, on to some logistics. We have now a long weekend break. I will send out emails kind of continuing what Suleiman started yesterday in regards to breaking out into different groups for your projects. If anybody looked in the Google Drive, I already put in there yesterday's lecture, the video of yesterday's lecture, and some extra reading material if you want to read about the community development that Suleiman was talking about. If anybody hasn't sent me your phone number, please do so. I already started a WhatsApp group this morning. Some of you sent me your phone numbers but don't have WhatsApp. If you want to install it just for this group, that would be very helpful. If not, that's also okay. Let me know if you want me to pass on to you screenshots or important things that go on in the WhatsApp group also by email. I can do that. But I find that WhatsApp is a very good way to kind of keep the conversation going between sessions. So yeah, as I said, we have a nice long break now, and on Tuesday is going to be the next session. We're going to have a double session, 1 hour with Tareq about local development with renewable energy, and another hour with Dr. Naamat Teschner. She'll explain about energy poverty and that whole concept about people who disparity between people who have more access to energy and those who don't. Thank you very much, everybody. As I said, feel free to email. You all got everybody's email addresses, and we'll be in touch, and I'll see you on time on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.